Yeah, hello, and greetings. I'm happy that you're all here, and I have the opportunity to talk for half an hour about my book that I published last autumn, Linus Festhäuser, Thomas Lux and me, Trigger Points, and the central question is how polarizes our society. And if you have a look at the debates not only in social media but also in newspapers but in academia as well, that the polarization topic is a mega topic. Everybody is discussing this. Everybody is thinking that the society is polarized, and I've got a couple of news excerpts, but also an academic publication, and that has a look at how often the words polarization and as appears in academic papers, and it's getting more and more intense. The polarization is a fear scenario, and that's something that you don't want. That Danny Ziblatt described the situation in the United States quite impressively, and we look towards the US very often. We also look towards Brexit and other societies where things are going apart. And what do we mean when looking at talking about polarization? And we often have the impression that large societal groups are moving towards each other that don't only represent the ideas, the ideological groups, but also socio-economic groups like academics versus working class, and cities versus rural areas. And you also, if you have a look at this, you often have a distinction between cosmopolitans who are pro-migration and world open, and on the other side, usually from remote areas with low economic status and low education. And we asked ourselves, that's sort of the idea, but we asked ourselves, is that actually true? We use the dromedar versus camel image because I know it's zoologically not correct. Dromedar is also a camel, but there's one hump. So you would say there's a lot of people in cities. Some are sitting in the middle, and in the middle there's camel with two humps, and there's a valley in the middle, and this and the other is unbridgeable differences. Is that true? That's our question, and I want to show to our research, and it's actually not that easy. And if you put up this thesis, then you would have to show that something is dividing itself, and the social imagination drifts apart, and
there's something we can't find. In the book, we show a lot of data and information on it about the last 30 years. Really nothing changed. But the interesting thing, this also applies to fields where you wouldn't think that. For example, when it comes to migration, we had a migration politics crisis, and we took care of that. But there's no falling apart of the open opinion. So if we say, well, there's two or more areas, what do we have then? So in the book, we make the suggestion to differentiate and to make it a little more complicated, as if we don't just say, okay, there's just two areas. It's different areas, different topics where we have to negotiate. Yeah, for example, when it comes to the east, if it comes to weapons for Ukraine, that wasn't something we looked at, but we looked at topics like structural strategies and conflicts that coin the society, and where there's conflicts that interact with each other. There's fear arenas, let's say so. It's the top-down insimilarities, for example, when it comes to money, and the second one is inside-outside stuff. When you have borders, for example, how open, how close is a society, and the other one is they and us. And there's questions of not discrimination, but and the today and tomorrow in similarities, and there's questions of climate change, and there's you can just unwrap it. What's the basis of this conflict? I can go much into detail, but what's happened if we look at it? There's the image is a little more difficult. For example, if we say like this classical thing from top and down, it's a little politicized. People discuss it, but a lot of people in Germany say that the insimilarities are too big. But on the other hand, there's only a little societal movement. Yeah, well, if it is like this, then there's criticism on it. So you should just earn votes if you are leftist, and we can just hire the taxes, and we have elections, and we ask ourselves, why is it so and not in the other way? And one of the answers is that there's a change of the societal situation, and it's more like horizontal conflicts about questions of societal demands and moralized questions and social requests and the ethnitizing of social conflicts. So, for example, do migrants get social benefits? There's a lot of social energy in it. There's a kind of horizontal discussion on this, and it's too little about this vertical status fight. The next one is the inside-outside. During the time, you can see like Germany being a migrant society. Many people say like migration is needed. We have humanitarian situations we have to deal with. There's also international rights that we have to follow, but we need work migration. And on the other hand, we have a group of like 20 to 25% that see it completely differently, but the majority says, okay, we need migration, and it's also important and needed. But the conflict starts when you ask yourself, okay, who's allowed to come in, and how do we have regulations on the situation, and do we suffice to have immigration politics? Yeah, we need migration, but are we actually able to integrate them into our work situations and also in the educational systems? And this is the main conflict. It's not only about like the questions of opening and closing, even if that's a part of the debate, but even if it sounds like that. The third field is the identical politics. Like if it's a really difficult situation, we have to look at it twice, because there's an enormous dynamic situation when it comes to like some acceptance of certain social situations or sexual situations, and there's also attacks on minorities. But society got a lot more liberal if you compare it to polls in the 90s. Well, people still said like homosexuality is a sickness. There's a lot of movement, but usually it's just like some kind of allowance tolerance. Anyone can be happy in the situation, and I don't have a problem with it. But if you look at it furthermore, in the political sense, especially when you come to the lower situations.
So the today and tomorrow inequality. In Germany, there's no huge conflict between climate deniers and people who accept climate change as a fact. That's less than 10% that who deny the climate change. But there's still conflicts, but they still exist, and they are still they revolve around the question about how to deal with the climate change. Some say it's 5. It's almost 12, and we really need to change quickly. And the world is changing dramatically. And others are saying we can't do it so quickly. It's not so much a target conflict, but it's more a question about how to assess the climate change and how to organize the socio-economic transformation and what to do with this. So we tried to take these arenas and indicators and measure them, and we group them towards different classes. If you take the polarization theory, that it depends on social relation, but what you see here, that's not necessarily the case. So the question of distribution politics is quite similar. Never, regardless of whether you're working class or an employer. In the 70s, it was much more distributed. In the 70s, the working class was for more distribution, and the employers were seeing that critically. Different, that's the field of migration politics, where you can see that the most progressive positions come from cultural experts, so-called cultural experts, like people like here, knowledge workers, people with an academic degree who work in culture and knowledge professions. They're more open, but production workers or people working simple service jobs see that differently. But even there, the distribution is not like totally polarized. We and them inequalities, high acceptance, also not so dramatic differences. You wouldn't say that there's chauvinistic working class and homophobic working class and tolerant academics. The differences are not that big. A little stronger is the social differentiation within the climate political points. So if you said that I just gave you a sedation pill and that's all good, the polarization is not that bad, everything's great, we're in a peaceful society, but I don't want to leave you at this. That would be the wrong message, but we will try and that usually have, we will want to try and turn this around. So I'm not saying that the societal polarization doesn't exist. But I'm saying that these polarizations are being created in the political and discursive space. So the polarization is happening from the top. One modus of this polarization is so these trigger points and trigger topics are fed by political and media actors. So the breaking points of public debate, where certain topics aren't dealt with on a factual level, and can't lead to a consent, you will have a dissensive structure, and they're connected to a basic moral, basic structure that that is related to how you assess societal process, and there is like a pro and contra situation where people go into a reactive mode, and these trigger topics are entry points for an affect-driven politics. The most famous example is a politician, I'm not saying which parties come, who talks about the asylum seekers going to dentists. Unfortunately, I wrote this up. I see, but I've brought others as well, and you can see this where the discussion atmosphere changed. The pulse goes a little more higher, the room temperature heightens, people have a different body posture when they debate these things, they cross their arms. You read, people call this and say that's, yellow press niveau, and and that's these are topics that you just can't sit down and just calmly debate this. So I've got these, you have to look, they're going way too fast to transfer a quota for trans people. That's triggered a lot of people. White men are doing TV. Are state institutions allowed to change the grammar? Habeck wants to set up energy Stasi. And the newest topic is bicycle lanes in Peru. That's a trigger point where a lot of people jumped on, and these are codes for to show about other things. It's not about bicycle lanes in Peru. It's about things that these are they call up association context. So the last example is white visitors are not allowed for 4 hours. So So last year there was an exhibition in a museum about colonialism, and where black people were allowed for only 4 hours on a Saturday, and that was a huge discussion by people who would probably never have gone to that museum and never heard of it, and probably the exhibition had to secure this exhibition with the police. So what is it about that this kind of minuscule topic, like 4 hours opening times, is such a big topic? So that what we write about that's what we talk about, these trigger points in the book. So we try and put this. I think these fit. So there's.
People have the feeling that's a kind of inequality against they have to get up against, and that's the second one of fairness and stuff like that. So there's a strong feeling of the loss of borders. If it's not the single event that triggers, but that event, well, is part of a chain of events. So if I just give them the small finger, they take the whole hand. So they come with it as well, and there's an inflation of expectations. And at some point, you have to draw a red line, and where you say to this point and no more. You all know this from gender-neutral language and. For example, the building energy rule. So, if in my private basement, that drew a lot of interest, and there's a private area where politics shouldn't have a statement on. So the thesis is that we feel something like a polarization in our society, and in this open debate, the middle doesn't say anything at all anymore, and becoming silent, and we only see the really loud edges, and we feel like we split the society right now, and politics is also pretty divided. And there's polarizations companies. If you look at news and other outlets that just bring up trigger topics to raise emotions and to just draw people into the political areas where they aren't at home, basically. So I showed you this picture. If you look at the voting areas, and they're more differentiated than the societal areas. There's some was able to be expected. For example, if you see at the SPD and opinions on this in and outside political arena, they just draw off, and the electionness of the Greens with the they and them, the AfD is pretty undecided. It's like some kind of caterpillar, while the Greens are really able to be seen. And if you look at the climate arena, there's more like a conservative area, and with the Greens are most progressive. If you look at the left party, when the BSV split off, you can see that in the inside-outside arena, it's the third from the top, or in the WU arena, that there's something like a Wagenknecht hill. Usually it's more like a normal distribution, but when it goes to climate politics, there's three parties in one. They are only on the same standpoint in one area, but the dividing of the party was pretty sure, yeah.
Okay, and then you see that's quite interesting that if you see these arenas, that's about a classical or institutionalized conflict, the top and the bottom arena. The other three arenas are new and unsaturated arenas that haven't arranged themselves yet, and there's still movement in them. And you can see that these parties, except for the Greens and the AfD, who are the outposts of this, other parties are almost on the same points, and there's no differentiation, and it's quite difficult for these arena parties to make a point in these arenas if they don't have any differentiation points. So what does that lead to? You have to keep tied to programmatic individual ideas. So they're not, for example, there are no speed limit on the Autobahn, or the limit of new debt may not be challenged at all. So that also means a hollowing out of the programmatic hollowing out of the parties. So I've took this from another colleague. The felt polarization, whether the real polarization, and the public, you see this. In the top, you see what happens in the public discourse. There's very pointed and accentuated positions, and the bottom, you have much more of a heterogeneous positioning of the entire society, and they, that. Most of us are mixtures. We're not all in a cosmopolitical or in a chauvinistic group. So there's people who are migration friendly and drive an SUV. The combination is much more diverse than the public discourse tries us to understand. So these conflicts are made. Polarization is generated politically and medially, and it doesn't exist as a socially structured sexual substrate. So the polarization, the trigger points with these sensible topics are crystallizing conflicts in which opinion classes are generated. So some topics are declared as a large societal topic. So in order to draw electoral honey from that, so the polarization metaphor actually blocks the view on the radicalization of the right fringe. So there's a very strong radicalization on the right fringe, and that reaches into the middle of the society. So it's two short points on that. So if you want to understand the conflict dynamics, we have to talk about the fatigue of change. So So society is in a big, huge change, and there's an increased speed of societal change due to migration, due to digitalization, due to diversification, so external shocks, wars, change of energy politics, and a couple of other things that are moving us and that can't be addressed in the classical ways of addressing conflicts. And we have a large portion of people who are saying we can't deal with that change. We're not being picked up. We're not on driving this. We're just affected and are victims of this societal changes process, societal change processes, and that's more than 40% who say that totally. And and another people experience political dispowerment and anger. So anger is a strong feeling, especially on the right fringe, and especially with voters of 80%, with 90% that are with voters of the AfD that say they're angry. So here you can see how people who are angry are socially constituted, so that you can see where you find yourself in a social and an economic structure. Do you have a lot of economic autonomy? Do you have a lot of resources, competencies, cognitive competencies, and can I adapt to this changing world, or am I just receiving commands on the low hierarchy of a large corporation? Then I will experience this change in a much stronger way, and that you can see that income as well as education correlate strong with the anger, and this other graphic shows that change fatigue also correlates a lot with anger. The left graph shows you the people who feel disconnected from the social change. They say they say angry. So there's a strong correlation between strong societal change and deep change, and the feeling of the perception of being excluded from the political process. So I want to leave you with a little picture. So I don't know how this animal is called. For me, it's a dromedar with a small right hump, and maybe that's the appropriate picture. We obviously have a problem in this development of right-wing movements, right extremist parties and movements. But we still have a huge hump of Democrats and people who can talk about these topics, and we still have a have a consensus in society about these central societal questions.